Okay. So I'll wait a little bit for people to get on here. I guess I'm 2 minutes early. Are these the right glasses? Oh my God, I never wear. It's still kind of. All right. So what this live is I got the filing from Judge Flowers, her denial that she filed yesterday. I had to pay for it. So again, people saying I'm like taking money. I paid money to get this that I then give to you all for free. We're going to go over the filing first. I know there's Sandra stirred up some drama today, and this being the drama group, we'll also go over the drama. But we're going to go over this first because there's plenty of people who could give two shits about any of the stupid drama and don't want to hear it. So then our conversation about, so we'll have the conversation on the filing first, and then people can tune out if they don't want to hear the bullshit drama. So I haven't read it yet. I got it about an hour ago, and so I was out doing things and drove home, had lunch, and now I'm live with y'all. So, all right. And I know Christy posted it here in Gossip, and so you can follow along or read for yourself. So, all right. First page is nothing that we need to read. Second page, and it's only, I think it's 14 pages, and some of them's just garbage that I know it pissed Christy off because she's already gone through and read this, and she saw like in the middle of it, there's a blank page, and they charge me per page. So I had to pay for a blank piece of paper. Anyway, and then anybody, I see some questions are going about the gossip. I'm not going to go on to the gossip, the drama yet. We're going to go over this first. And yes, these videos stay up. I only deleted the one. So this one stays up. And hi, Sandra, and everybody else who hates me that have to watch everything I do. All right, let's get into this and stop talking about drama so people who don't want to hear it. Page 2. This case was remanded to this court for consideration of claims made by the defendant for relief from what he asserts was a state's violation of Wisconsin Statute 968.205 and the subsequent violation of his constitutional rights pursuant to the ruling in Youngblood versus Arizona. A prior motion to the Court of Appeals was denied. The defendant alleges that on January 24, 2019, his current post-conviction counsel received a previously undisclosed police report. The report, dated September 20, 2011, was written by Deputy Jeremy Hawkins of the Calumet County Sheriff's Department. The defendant further alleges that his counsel received a previously undisclosed ledger sheet on or about the same date that identified the material that was the subject of Deputy Hawkins' report. The report of Deputy Hawkins indicates that he, Sergeant Investigator Mark Wiegert, Attorney Thomas Fallon, and Attorney Norman Gahn removed materials stored in evidence and released them to the Hallback family. The officers and attorneys identified which tagged items of evidence were alleged to contain human bone or possible human fragments. In order to accomplish this task, the parties used a report of Dr. Leslie Eisenberg, the forensic anthropologist called as a witness by the prosecution in this matter. Deputy Hawkins used Dr. Eisenberg's report to identify evidence identified as having come from the gravel pit southwest of the Avery property in deciding which materials were to be returned to the Hallback family. The defendant alleges that the state violated the preservation of evidence statute, Wisconsin statute, blah, blah, which requires law enforcement agencies to retain evidence as long as a convicted individual is in custody or until his or her mandatory release date. Additionally, the defendant asserts that his constitutional rights were violated when he was deprived of the opportunity to have the alleged human remains tested. If such a test proved that the material marked with the designated evidence tags were human remains and could be identified as those of the victim, the defendant asserts that it would establish that the evidence that led to his conviction was planted by the real killer in this crime. On January 24, 2019, the defendant filed a motion with the Court of Appeals requesting that the appeal in this matter be stayed and remanded to the Circuit Court to review the circumstances regarding the withholding of the records and the release of the evidentiary materials to the Halbach family. Additional documents were filed by both the state and the defense regarding this motion. On February 25, 2019, the Court of Appeals granted the motion to remand these issues to the Circuit Court for consideration and decision on the issues. That decision will then be permitted to be included in the continued primary appeal before the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals was clear that the supplemental motion was restricted to reviewing whether the state violated Wisconsin statute, blah, blah, and how such a violation would affect the constitutional right of the defendant. As such, the court will limit its review to these issues alone. As the defendant stated in his brief, quote, Mr. Avery is not stating a sufficiency of evidence or ineffective assistance of counsel claim relating to inadequate testing of bone fragments. Rather, Mr. Avery's claims pertain to the constitutional violation stemming from the state's destruction of the human bone fragment evidence. The retesting of the bones is relevant to this constitutional claim on the matter of the exculpatory nature of the destroyed evidence. However, the retesting of the bone fragments is not a claim in its own right, unquote. Now we're going on to page 4. However, before the court addresses the primary issue, it feels compelled to address the recusal motion brought by the defendant. It is apparent from the record that there are no grounds upon which to grant that relief. The civil case referred to by the defendant, in which he was named as a party, was judicially reassigned to this court, but the case was immediately stayed pending the resolution of the defendant's criminal appeal. Before any proceedings were conducted by this court, the matter was voluntarily dismissed. The court neither examined any evidence nor issued any rulings in the civil case other than to grant the motion for voluntary dismissal. The administrative assignment of the defendant's civil case to this court does not form the grounds for a recusal in this action. As further evidence in support of the request for recusal, the defendant argues that this judge served on the Crime Victim Rights Board along with District Attorney Sweaty Sweat Sweat during the time that the original trial in this matter was being heard. The defendant asserts that by being on the same volunteer committee with the prosecutor at the time of trial, the judge in this matter must recuse herself. The defendant relies on SCR blah, blah, blah for this proposition. However, the provision of the Judicial Code applies to judges who have practiced law with attorneys involved in matters before the court. This judge never practiced law or participated as co-counsel with attorney Sweaty Sweat Sweat on the defendant's criminal trial or in any other matter. At the time in question, this judge was not serving on the bench and was a citizen member of the Crime Victims Rights Board. The fact that attorney Sweaty Sweat Sweat was on the same voluntary public board at the same time as this judge cannot be defined as the practice of law. The defendant has offered no grounds upon which the court should recuse itself. Further, the court must comment on the defendant's objection to the state's response brief. In another motion before the court, submitted April 11, 2019, the defendant asks for leave to file a supplemental response brief in this matter, or, in the alternative, to strike the state's response brief as being unauthorized under the remand order of the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals states in its order that this court shall conduct any proceedings necessary to address claims in the supplemental motion submitted by the defendant. The order acknowledges the defendant's position on this matter and determines that the best course of action is to have this issue developed and litigated while the matter is still relatively fresh and not procedurally barred. The defendant echoes this argument in his filings, asserting that his motion should not be procedurally barred and that all claims raised by this motion should be heard by the circuit court. Both parties have filed briefs in this matter and all arguments will be considered. Regarding the issue at hand, this court has been charged with determining whether Wisconsin statute blah blah has been violated by the state during the post-conviction period and whether any such violation of the statute deprived the defendant of the rights provided to him via the ruling in Youngblood versus Arizona Supra. Both parties submit numerous arguments and allegations in their briefs. However, the court will address only those arguments that focus on the charge given to it by the Court of Appeals. Wisconsin Statutes 968.205 states, except as provided in sub 3, if physical evidence that is in possession of a law enforcement agency includes any biological material that was collected in connection with a criminal investigation that resulted in a criminal conviction, and the biological material is, and they have this in italics, so they're why can't I think of the word? This is their important point. From a victim of the offense that was subject of the criminal investigation or may be reasonably used to incriminate or exculpate any person for the offense, the law enforcement agency shall preserve the physical evidence until every person in custody has a result of the conviction, has reached his or her discharge date. And then it has in parentheses emphasis added. The first clause of the statute does not apply to this matter. None of the material returned to the Halbach family was scientifically identified as the physical remains of Teresa Halbach. No DNA testing was performed on material returned to the family that conclusively identified the material as belonging to a human being or any specific individual. Indeed, at the time of trial, the FBI crime lab indicated that DNA testing could not be done on the evidence submitted, precluding identification of the remains as being those of the victim. Without such identification, the evidence in question cannot, within the plain language of the statute, be identified as biological material from the victim of the offense in this case. However, this does not end the inquiry into this matter. The second clause of the statute may apply in the case before the court. The defense argues that the evidentiary material returned to the Halbach family might reasonably have been used to exculpate Mr. Avery or establish that biological evidence was planted on his property to incriminate the defendant in this matter. The defense argues that the evidence recovered from the quarry site may have proved that the victim was not killed on the Avery property, as argued by the prosecutor, and that the evidence found on the grounds of Avery salvage were planted there by the real offender in this matter to incriminate Mr. Avery. Because that evidence is no longer available to the defense for testing, the defense argues that it can no longer use the material to exculpate Mr. Avery for this offense. Furthermore, the defense argues that the state further violated the statute by not providing the required notice to the defendant or his counsel prior to disposing of the evidence, preventing the defendant from exercising his opportunity to object to its release or destruction. Wisconsin statute blah blah provides that a law enforcement agency may destroy evidence covered by the statute before the time specified in sub 2 only if all of the following applies. A, The law enforcement agency sends a notice of its intent to destroy the evidence to all persons who remain in custody as a result of the criminal prosecution, and to either the attorney of record of each person in custody or the state public defender. Subsection 4 of the statute provides what shall be included in such notice. A notice provided under sub 3A shall clearly inform the recipient that the evidence will be destroyed unless, within 90 days after the date on which the person receives the notice, either a motion for testing of the evidence is filed under blah blah, or a written request for the retention of the evidence is submitted to the law enforcement agency. There is no dispute that the evidence in question was released to the Halbach family without the statutorily required notice under subsections 2 and 4 being provided to the defendant or the defense attorney of record in this case. However, the inquiry into the matter is not terminated with this issue. In order for the statute to apply, the evidence in question must reasonably be used to incriminate or exculpate a defendant for the offense. Going on to page 8 of 14. The ruling in State versus Greenwald, blah, 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 incorporated both of the tests cited by the defendant outlining the constitutional requirements by the state's responsibility to preserve evidence, as set forth in California versus Trombetta, blah, blah, and Youngblood versus Arizona, blah, blah. The state's failure to preserve evidence violates a defendant's due process rights if law enforcement, 1, failed to preserve evidence that is apparently exculpatory, or 2, acted in bad faith by failing to preserve evidence that is potentially exculpatory. Greenwald, Supra at 67, whatever. The defense is correct in asserting that Wisconsin courts have applied the reasoning in these cases to the post-conviction destruction of evidence, State versus Parker, blah, blah, blah. In order to establish that the evidence in question was apparently exculpatory, a defendant must demonstrate that the evidence possessed exculpatory value that was apparent to those who had custody of the evidence before it was destroyed, State versus Oinas, blah, blah, blah. It is not enough to simply allege that destroyed evidence had the possibility of being exculpatory. Evidence does not have apparent exculpatory value if analysis of the evidence would have provided an avenue of investigation that might have led to any number of directions. The defendant argues that the evidence returned to the Halbach family contained human remains that, if tested under currently available DNA testing, especially the Andy rapid DNA analysis, could be conclusive in identifying the remains as belonging to the victim, Teresa Halbach. However, it must be noted that the defendant begins his argument with the conclusion that the evidence turned over to the Halbach family were, in fact, human remains. The defendant points to several portions of the record where the evidence that was collected from the quarry site was listed in police documents or reports as human remains. The defendant specifically cites the police report of Deputy Hawkins dated September 20, 2011 in support of his claim. In that document, Deputy Hawkins writes that he, Sergeant Investigator Mark Wiegert, Attorney Thomas Fallon, and Attorney Gahn removed evidence with property tag numbers that were listed as having contained human bones. They determined which of the evidence samples contained human bone by using a report authorized by Dr. Leslie Eisenberg. Dr. Eisenberg was the forensic anthropologist called as an expert witness by the prosecution to identify the evidence collected from various locations during the investigation of this case. The record in this case contains more than one document created by Dr. Eisenberg, and the report written by Deputy Hawkins doesn't identify the specific document used by the parties on that date. In her final report submitted to District Attorney Sweaty Sweat Sweat on December 6, 2006, Dr. Eisenberg set forth her conclusions identifying which evidence supplied for analysis contained human bone fragments and what was identified as material other than human in origin. On February 28, 2007 and March 1, 2007, Dr. Eisenberg testified at the defendant's trial. She was questioned extensively by both Prosecutor Fallon and Attorney Strang regarding her conclusions in that final report. On March 1, 2007, Attorney Strang cross-examined Dr. Eisenberg. Attorney Strang questioned the doctor about material discovered in the investigative area referred, and page 10 of 14 is completely blank, so now we go on to page 11, to as the quarry in investigative reports. During his cross-examination, Attorney Strang asked the doctor about 2 fragments of material that appeared to be pelvic bone. However, Dr. Eisenberg testified that she was not able to conclude with scientific certainty that the fragments were pelvic bone or that they were human in origin. After questioning the doctor about other aspects of the opinions in her report, Attorney Strang returned to the evidentiary material found in the quarry. Dr. Eisenberg testified that at the time of writing her report in December of 2006, she could identify that 8 of the fragments were burned and 1 of the fragments was definitely not human. She qualified that her opinion on the material was, at that point of her analysis, as much as she knew about the identifications at that point in time. In continued cross-examination, Dr. Eisenberg once again confirmed that the quarry area contained suspected, possibly human bones. Attorney Fallon conducted a redirect examination. Attorney Fallon asked Dr. Eisenberg to clarify her opinion on the nature of the fragments found in the gravel pit at the quarry southwest of the Avery property. Attorney Fallon asked if, in her original analysis, the doctor was only able to determine that 1 fragment of the material recovered from the quarry was non-human. Dr. Eisenberg confirmed that. He then asked if, in subsequent review and analysis, the doctor had determined that several more of the fragments were non-human. Dr. Eisenberg responded that all of the fragments, only 3, that of all of the fragments, only 3 were identifiable as being possibly human in origin. Responding to a question from Attorney Fallon, the doctor confirmed that she could not, to a reasonable degree of anthropological or scientific certainty, identify any of the fragments as human bone. Page 11. On cross-examination, Dr. Eisenberg stated that the material from the quarry location did, in fact, contain non-human bone that was intact. The doctor confirmed that burned bone fragments could be found at all 3 sites where evidentiary material was found. However, she could not confirm with any degree of scientific certainty that any of the bones from the quarry were human in origin. As previously stated, pursuant to the ruling in Greenwald, for evidence to be, quote, apparently exculpatory, unquote, to law enforcement, the defendant must demonstrate that the evidence possessed exculpatory value apparent to those who had custody of the evidence before it was destroyed. In this case, the defendant cannot meet his burden. While the defendant points to the report of Deputy Hawkins, which indicates that human bones taken from the quarry were returned to the Hallback family, the statement of the deputy does not transform the physical material from what it is into what he declares it to be on the form. Dr. Eisenberg testified at trial that the evidence taken from the quarry could not be identified as human remains. The FBI could not test the bones to determine if the fragments were human remains, or if so, to whom the bones belonged. Nothing of record indicates that in 2011, when the material was given to the Hallback family, the material was reclassified as human bone. The law enforcement officers and attorneys involved in the release of the evidence used a prior written report of Dr. Eisenberg, written before her testimony under oath, to select what material would be given to the Hallback family. Dr. Eisenberg clarified her opinion in her trial testimony and confirmed that none of the material found in the quarry could be identified as human bone fragments. Furthermore, the FBI confirmed that the fragments could not be tested for DNA to confirm whether the fragments were human or identified as those of the victim. Now we are on page 12 of 14. Under those circumstances, it cannot be said, or it also says we're on page 13. They have different things, so whatever. Under those circumstances, it cannot be said that the materials released from evidence would have been apparently exculpatory to anyone. There was no scientific evidence of record at the time that the material was released to support that human biological material was being released or that the material was known to be the remains of the victim. The defense argues that it would be absurd for the state to release the bone fragments to the Halbach family if it didn't believe that the material released was the remains of the victim. Therefore, the defendant argues the state The state acknowledged that the material released was apparently exculpatory. However, even if law enforcement believed that the material was human bone, their belief would not be founded in science or any final evidence produced during the investigation or trial. They would be acting on an unfounded belief rather than the reasonable belief as required by the Greenwald test. Individual belief does not transmute one form of matter into another. Nothing supports the position that the materials released were apparently exculpatory. Even if the defendant cannot meet the burden that the material released was apparently exculpatory, the defendant may meet the constitutional test for a violation of his rights under Greenwald if he can establish that the state acted in bad faith by failing to preserve evidence that is potentially exculpatory. To establish bad faith, the defendant must show that law enforcement was aware of potentially exculpatory value of the evidence that they failed to preserve and acted with either official animus or a conscious attempt to suppress evidence. In this matter, the defendant cannot show that the state knew of the potential exculpatory value of the evidence. As stated above, Dr. Eisenberg testified that the remains could not be identified as being of human origin, and the FBI confirmed that evidence could not be tested to confirm whether the material was from a human being or that they were the remains of the victim. Dr. Eisenberg also testified that the material found in the quarry, tagged as number, ready, 8675, was largely unburned. This does not support the defendant's argument that the victim was murdered and burned in a place other than the Avery property and placed there at a later date. Given the testimony of Dr. Eisenberg and the lack of any evidence supporting the released material being human in origin, it cannot be said that law enforcement was aware of any potentially exculpatory value of the material that they did not preserve and that they were making a conscious attempt to suppress evidence favorable to the defendant. Based on the foregoing, the court finds that the defendant has failed to meet his burden to establish the Wisconsin Statute 968.205 was violated or his constitutional rights were violated under the provisions of Youngblood versus Arizona. As such, the defendant's motion is denied. So, I didn't understand probably a quarter of that. So don't think it's just you. A lot of this stuff is just blah, 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 gabbly, blah, blah, blah. So bottom line is, it still makes absolutely zero sense that if you're claiming there's no proof that these are even human bones, why do they go to the Halbach family? I'm sorry, it makes zero sense. You do not give, They also took into evidence, what, didn't they take in like a Playboy or something of Stevens? Do they give that to the Halbach family? Empty bleach bottles? That go to the Halbach family? Why would you give something that is not the property of Teresa's to the Halbach family? Unless it's Teresa. But we don't know anything. There's nothing that says anything they have is Teresa. They've proved nothing. Stephen was railroaded. So now, we all knew this was going to happen. All right. Everybody knows that Judge Flowers is going to deny it. She's just dragging her feet and taking it out, making it last as long as she can so they can keep working, in the shadows to try and, work up their damage control. And Kathleen always wanted to go up a court, that she wasn't going to win it here. So people don't need to be freaking out that, oh my God, what happens for Stephen now? This was expected. It's just a long, stupid process. So Kathleen will file in the next higher court, and then however long that's going to take, blah, 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 blah. So, but this is pretty ridiculous. This page 6, and that's what Christy had read it ahead of time, and she's like, oh, page 6. So yeah, so page 6 is trying to argue that it's okay to give those bones to the Halbach family because it's not Teresa's, and it wouldn't change the case because it's not Teresa, so it doesn't mean anything. Bullshit. Why did you give those to the Halbach family in 2011? And the case was 2006. Why then? So that's that. I don't think there's much to talk about on there because it's just, what we know. Christy has posted it here in Gossip. I think Patty posted it on Stephen Avery Project. And now I know everybody else will just steal it since we've posted it. And, so I paid the money for it, and then they'll free, but I'm the thief. I'm going live on Stephen Avery Project public page at 5 p.m. It's 1:30 right now. So when I go live on Stephen Avery Project, it will be to go over this. I don't talk about the drama in there. But maybe I will now. So I'm going to scroll through what comments I am able to see from reading all that. And so people saying hello. Brandy says, KZ is okay with this because she'd rather deal with appellate court, correct? Yes. They were already more favorable, but this needed to be done first, correct? Yes. This is just the protocol. This is just the order of things. Heidi says, it's been a while since I've been on. Well, hello, Heidi. Renato says, hello, Mr. Stephen. Renato from Brazil. Well, I'm Jax West, not Stephen. Stephen doesn't have access to the internet. Replies to each other that I just skip. Heidi says, I'm here, just had been in another world since my 2 fur babies died so close together. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Heidi. Amy says, if I was Stephen, I'd be going insane with all the waiting for decisions. They really should look into the times of appeals. I know, because we just had this in Melissa Kaluzinski's case. She had a court date of August 14th, 13th, I can't remember which one, and now they got another extension, and now it's pushed to the 28th. It's there should be a set time limit on all this stuff, and it should be a reasonable time limit. There's no reason. Judge Flowers knew how she was going to rule on this right away when it was filed. There was no reason to have to wait this long, months for this, and you're just stealing more of the man's life. Replies. Hazel, is this going now? Yes, it's 1:32 p.m. currently. Hi, Peggy in the UP. Heidi says, oh, you're talking about your dog. Crystal says, our hearts do go on. Replies. Amy says, so why would Teresa's family accept something that hasn't been proven her remains? Doesn't seem right, but nothing about this case does. Yeah, I don't get it. Why would you want that? How do you know then it's not a deer? I don't know. Why? So, and you had it go, they had it delivered to the funeral home. If you don't believe that it's Teresa, why is it going to a funeral home? What are you doing with them? Very weird. Heidi says this is such bullshit. Debbie says, do they not think advances in forensic testing will happen then? I thought that was partly the reason evidence is kept in storage. Right, and that's the thing now. Because you gave these bones to the Halbach family that went to the funeral home, I think isn't it unknown what's happened with them, if they were cremated? Was Teresa originally cremated? What bones they identified it as her? Were they cremated? Were they just buried? Did they then dig her back up and then throw these bones in there? But you've contaminated these bones now. So even if there was some way that Kathleen could get them, now there'd be the argument that they're not the actual ones. So you've screwed up Stephen's right to a fair trial. You destroyed the evidence without his permission or knowledge. Julie says, COA is going to read the filing with a fine-tooth comb. This is a good thing. Oh, the Court of Appeals. Sorry. Sometimes it takes me a little bit to pick up on abbreviations. No, Stephanie, I've not gone on to the Jack stuff yet. I was going over the filing, and then we'll go into the Sandra stuff. Julie says the state defends this shit. Heidi says KZ wanted a denial. Hazel says, how can the Halbach family even accept the bones if they don't know for sure they belong to Teresa, unless they know something that the rest of us don't know? Bingo. Julie says, Judge Flowers denied so she could save with her cohorts. Ugh, if I could read. If she had granted a hearing, she'd be in deep shit with her buddies. She denied under the guise of self-preservation, saving her career, in my opinion. Christy says, I call bullshit on the whole thing. Julie, save face, was correcting a typo. Heidi says, bullshit is right. Christy says, they dug deep into their assholes to pull out that reason for denial. Julie correcting spelling. Don't worry, I have to correct my speaking. Miley says, damn, I'm at work. Will you keep this up? Yes. I get asked this question every time I do a live now. It was only one time I removed it because I did something that I purposely titled it in a way that Carla would want to see it, and then removed it so she couldn't get it because it would drive her crazy. I don't remove the rest of them because I don't care. I'm open. Go ahead, Sandra, share this with whoever. And Carla, hi. Hazel says, maybe they know they aren't Teresa's bones and are doing the law enforcement a favor by hiding them in the ground to keep Stephen in prison. Correct. Courtney says, I just saw Sandy's post that Stephen took you off his visiting list. What's going on? As soon as I get to the bottom of whatever comments are here, I'll get on to that drama. Tony says, I'm so angry about this ruling. They don't care a bit about two men's lives being wasted. I know KZ has her plan, and I know she won't rest until Stephen is out, but I can't help but be frustrated on his behalf. I agree. Dawn says, once it goes to the appellate court, does anyone know if they have a time, non-time limit like the state? Don't want it to linger on and on. Dawn, I tell you guys all the time that I have a numbers issue. And so my brain just really, anything that has to do with numbers, I don't recall or remember. Even like my age, when somebody asks my age, I have to think about it at times that I can't remember how old I am. So I always hear in all these things, something's got a limit of 30 days. Something's a limit of 60 days. Something's a limit of 90 days. I don't know which is which, what is what. Not a lawyer. Don't pretend to basically be one. But yeah, so there may be one of those, but then they get extension and extension and extension. So that muddies it up too. You know, makes it drag out. So how long is this stuff? I don't know. Christy says, at some point, someone confirmed they had a burial. I can't remember where. Yeah, see, Christy, I think I've seen both things. I think I've seen it say that she was cremated and that she was buried. I don't know. Maybe I should just show up on the Halbach's doorstep one day and see if they would just talk to me or write them a letter. Julie says, I think Bushman took her body, found on Kuss Road, to his in-laws' crematorium. They just didn't grind the bones down. Hazel says, there is a grave in Teresa's name, and apparently it isn't looked after. Strange. Christy says, don't ask Jax about time limits. Yep. Christy knows. All right. So that's all the conversation right now on that. So now let me pull up, go down. Sorry. Let me pull up Sandra's post from today. Because I'll read her post. At the screenshot, I posted it as soon as somebody sent it to me today. Because I'm open. Scroll down. Okay, come on, open. All right. So Sandy posted in her official, in all capitals, Stephen Avery Truth Wins group. Stephen wants me to inform the group that Jax West has been removed from his visiting list due to disrespect. I love that. Disrespect. It seems like everything Steve okayed, she would tell people she was against. Mammothon, rally, petitions, donations to his trust fund, and his mom and dad donations, Christmas, etc. It just seemed to Steve like she was not a true supporter and that he had misjudged her. And now in all capitals, thank you to all the true supporters of Steve. We love you! Exclamation points, hearts, hearts. So, sorry, my back hurts. Let me address this. Is this true? Probably. I have done lives recently when I've said Stephen is probably mad at me again because I haven't heard from him since Father's Day. So it probably is true. You're on a list for 6 months and then he can remove you and put somebody else on. He can't make any changes from 6 months. I don't recall when Stephen started talking to me again because Stephen hadn't talked to me the whole 6 months prior to that because Sandra had worked on him. Sandra and Carla and Tracy and all those idiots were all telling him all this bullshit about me. And he got mad. And then I didn't hear from him for 6 months. Then he gets mad at Tracy due to Sandra told Stephen to remove Tracy and Angie off his visitors list. Sandra told Stephen her two little BFFs are constantly talking shit about her and treating her like shit, and she wanted them off the list. So then Stephen takes them off the list and calls me. Why did Stephen call me? Because he had been talking to a woman who the woman was defending me to Stephen. This was a person I don't know. She's not somebody who posts in the groups. She's not a drama person. She was just a supporter of Stephen's who was writing to him. And then Stephen went from writing with her to talking to her on the phone to wanting her to come visit him. And now, because this woman spoke well of me, that's why Stephen started talking to me again. So now over the summer, this woman is sick of the drama that surrounds Stephen. Sandra and Tracy and all of them found out at one point who she was because Stephen told them her name, and they then attacked her because they don't want anybody talking to Stephen that's not in their fucking pocket. And this is a woman who, like I said, doesn't care about any of the drama, none of it. And then when she would talk to Stephen, she would hear all the drama stuff. And it's almost as if Stephen is the one that's constantly trying to pit the sides against each other, that he keeps creating this chaos, that now he'll be friends with them, now he'll be friends with me, or whatever. So after he removed Angie and Tracy from his list and they got all upset, of course, Sandra denies she's the one that told Stephen to remove them and made it out like it was all my doing. How is it my doing when I hadn't spoken to him in 6 months because you guys convinced him to hate me? I had nothing to do with him removing them or putting me on. It all came out of the blue to me that all of a sudden Stephen is calling me. I hadn't heard from him in 6 months. And then we talked for a couple of months and then he told me he was adding me to the list. And now because of that, then Sandra said to him to remove her off the list. And Stephen had toyed with it, but he never officially removed her. But she stopped going because she didn't want to upset Tracy and Angie and all her little fan buddies. So, and then you had Carla making the threats and all these people making these threats that they were going to cut Stephen off if he talked to me. Really good supporters you are. Really, you want to claim your supporters. But because Stephen talks to me, Stephen Avery Project currently has 202,225 people who follow it. It is the biggest Stephen Avery support group there is. And you're constantly trying to get Stephen to turn against his biggest support group. How does that make any sense? Let me go back to her thing. Mammothon. Fuck you, Mammothon. Well, I know what you're doing with that and making money off of your goddamn YouTubes. You can keep trying to make excuses and say you're not. You are. Whether or not you're making money initially, you're trying to use the traffic that you would get from this stupid thing to get you the number of followers so you can monetize your YouTube. And if you weren't so concerned about making money on your YouTube, why is Richard McAdams throwing a fit when YouTube demonetizes some of his crap? So, Mammothon, fuck you. I don't care about it. And I told Stephen I don't care about it. I tell him to his face. They can make it up now like he's only just hearing of this. I told him in visits I thought the Mammothon was stupid. Told him that. But on Stephen Avery Project, I didn't post on there saying it was stupid, the public page of the 202,000 people, because we don't put the drama in there. The drama only goes in here in the MAM gossip group, where I can vent, where I am going to tell people to fuck off. So, Mammothon, fuck you. That was about Tracy and Richard making money. Rally, fuck you. The rally is stupid. And, it makes Stephen look like a laughing stock that 202,000 people on Stephen Avery Project, how many millions of people have watched Making a Murderer, and you can't get more than 50 people to show up there. Half of them are family. That's an embarrassment. You do nothing there. So no, I'm not supporting a stupid rally. Told Stephen that. Petitions. We have posted the petitions. Petitions have been posted and shared. But I also state in here, petitions are dumb. Because unless it gets hundreds and thousands of signatures, nobody looks at it and nobody cares. And so it's yet another embarrassment in the Stephen Avery case that has all these millions of people and you can't get 10,000 signatures on it. But you need 100,000 and you can't even get 10. So, and let's not forget the Brendan Dassey petition they're always pushing. That's fucking mine. I organized that petition. That was all me. What else? Donations to his trust fund. Yeah. Told Stephen, how ridiculous is this that you're giving money to some guy in Australia to put in an account? So, nope, not going to support that either. And his mom and dad donations, Christmas, etc. Nope, not supporting money going to Carla, and Stephen knows that. I've told him over and over again, I will never do anything when the money goes through Carla's hands, and he says he doesn't want anything going through Carla. So, as you notice from all these things that Sandra listed, it's all money. Money, money, money. I'm doing this video. There's only 72 people on here right now. I'm sure they'll make fun of me. Only 72 people were on here. It's not monetized. I'm going live in 3 hours, right? Did I do the math correctly? It's almost 2, and I'm going live at 5. I'm going live on the Steven Avery public page. It's not monetized. I get, anytime I go on to Steven Avery Project from a computer, I get a notice that they want me to monetize videos on there, that I could start making money off them. I never have. Never have. The judge's ruling that I just read for you all, and that's posted for everybody to steal. I paid about $20 for it. It was $17.50 and then some fee, even though all they're doing is emailing it to me. So like around 20 bucks. I paid that. My pocket. Supporters aren't giving me money. I'm not asking for money. There's been times in here in gossip that people have said something about paying towards gas or for money for the food card when I go visit the inmates that I do. I'm not running a campaign for that. I don't do anything for that. People have just done it. And I do appreciate it, because I don't have money. I'm not like the Avery family that I have a summer home and I've got boats and jet skis and snowmobiles and all that stuff. I don't have that. I scrape by. But I paid that $20. When I go visit Melissa and Marnie in prison, it costs me $50 to fill up my tank to drive down there, $50 in food, $50 for my tank when I get home. I'm paying that. I have no income, but I'm paying all that. I am offered lots over all these years that I have been involved in this case. I have been offered money. I was offered Dr. Phil lots of money. He was going to pay me to go on, and I didn't do it. Tammy from Words Matter Publishing wants me to write a book, and I have actually started the book. I started the book years ago before I even met Tammy. Words Matter Publishing now has a TV network on Roku. She wants me to do a show on there. I haven't. I've told her I will, but I haven't done it. I know stuff about this case and people involved in this case that I've never told. Not true, because I was going to say never told a soul, but I've told my partner. I've told Jeff. Jeff knows everything. Because I was protecting Stephen. I was protecting Brendan. Regardless if Stephen or Brendan like me or not, I'm protecting them. But I'm getting a little tired of their fans and the constant attacks on me, trying to make me look like a bad person when I am the only one not profiting off their misery. So I think maybe it's time to give people what they want. So I think I'm going to put it out there and say I will sell to the highest bidder and tell you what I know of this case. And I'll make money off of it. And then you can call me a thief and that I am making money off of those guys. And I will take that money to the bank. But you know what I'll end up doing with it? I'm going to use it to help other wrongful convicted people. Do you know when people get out of prison, whether or not they've been wrongfully convicted or they serve their full term, even if, say, you're a lifer, you get a life sentence of, but, you're sentenced in your 20s, so you still get out, at some point. there's nothing to help you get back into society. For instance, say you went into prison in the early 80s and you've gotten out in the last few years. Yeah, I'm sure you have the internet and stuff in the prison, but you don't really know the internet. You don't know all this crap we have on smartphones. I know, like talking to Marnie, she's only been in prison 10 years, but social media, I mean, Facebook existed and everything before she went in, but she's like, has no grasp of why people are going to tell people every inner thought and what you're having for dinner and all that stuff. She's like, this is very weird to me. She does, and then just how people are so mean. And it's because of, the keyboard warrior stuff, keyboard cowboy, whatever you want to call it. So if I cash in and make a lot of money on selling what I know on this case, I'm going to use it for others. I'm not going to be buying a snowmobile. I'm not going to be putting tires on my car. The only thing I will do with that money is I will pay off my son's college loan. So, moderators of Steven Avery Project are very pissed off about this. I actually, when somebody sent me the screenshot, I laughed because I knew it was coming. And I know they think this is something that really upsets me. Oh, no, I'm not talking to Steven anymore. I could give 2 fucks. And I'm not saying it like sore loser, sour grapes thing and trying to like save face. I truly don't care. I am still going to continue to support Steven's innocence because he's innocent and should not be in prison for something he didn't do. So Steven Avery Project will continue. But like one of the moderators is so pissed off because she's so tired of these games from Steven, because you have to remember 2 of the moderators at Steven Avery Project has been with the page longer than I have. They were there when Curtis founded it and were helping Curtis the whole way. So they saw what happened behind the scenes back then, how Steven treated Curtis, how Steven's family treated Curtis. So they've seen this go round and round and round. And it's been, 4 years? They're so tired of it. So one of them's like, let's change the name of Steven Avery Project and take his freaking name even off there. She's so tired of all of this. They saw them, they won with Curtis. The family went after Curtis hard. Curtis has a young family, a young growing family. And so he just couldn't take the abuse anymore. And he wanted the page to go to somebody who was going to continue it in support of Steven. And the moderators suggested me. And I've hit the ground running. They've come after me hard. They have come after me so fucking hard by contacting my local police department, contacting my attorney general's office, contacting people who live in my town. Just craziness. Trying to get rid of me. It's not ever going to happen. They made that fake Facebook page, Jax West is a fraudster or whatever, and they've changed the name to something else. I can't remember what they changed it to. Christy, one of the moderators here, they made a fake Christy page so they could make it look like they were having a conversation with Christy and that Christy was saying things she didn't say. It's so bizarre to me, and so this stuff has been going on the whole fucking time. And so that's why this group was made, because I'm trying to bite my lip, because I'm trying to keep Steven Avery Project professional and none of this stuff. But I want to expose this shit because this shit's going on and people have no clue. But see, most of the people on Steven Avery Project that go there, they don't even know who these people are. They don't know who Sandra is. They don't know who Carl is. They don't follow any of that stuff. They're just following what they know from the show. So these people are so desperate for popularity and then making money off them. Sandra has had GoFundMes for herself. My basement flooded. And now she didn't make it for herself. That's where they go get around it. Carla's had some for herself. Oh, somebody else made it for me, so I have no power over that. You could say, no, absolutely not. You're not giving me money. You could do that. But they don't. They welcome all this money. They use Dolores's name to take people's sympathies for poor Dolores and say they're getting stuff for Dolores. And it's going to be the 1 for you, 1, 2, 3 for me. 1 for you, 1, 2, 3 for me. So I think it is so stupid. Sandra looks ridiculous in this post because everything she listed is a way for them to make money. And nobody is talking about truly just supporting Stephen and his innocence. So, now while you're watching me in this, while I say some things that may sound like I'm mad, I'm not. I get overly animated when I speak. This truly doesn't bother me. Honestly. I knew it was coming, and it's dumb. And the thing that I said to somebody today that had messaged me, it's like, I prefer being unleashed because there is so much stuff I don't say because I'm protecting Stephen. If you knew some of the things Stephen said to me on visits, it's bad. It's stuff I know that if I put out there, it would make people think he's guilty. Now, it's not him saying he's guilty, and it's nothing that says he's guilty. All right? He's 100% innocent. Let me make that clear. But certain things he says and does, and his behavior would really stir some stuff up. I know stuff he has told me about the family, that even with everything the family does to me, I have not put out there because, again, it's protecting Stephen. And even with this, I still want to protect Stephen because he's innocent and it's awful what's been done to him in his life. But I'm thinking it's time for Jax to get paid. Because I guess it's going to be 2 wrongs will make a right. I could make money and then I could donate money to the WMP Justice Review Citizens Investigator Group that will go towards having this legal team, all these different experts, to help with other cases of wrongfully accused that they don't have money to have all these experts. And again, I'm not rich. I don't have money. I use my money to try and what money I have to help others. Seriously. Let me scroll now to read your comments on the gossip portion. And I can't be on here too long because I'm going live on Stephen Avery Project at 5. And you guys all know I'm an activist, and I've joked with my moderators. See, do I sound like a douchebag saying my moderators like I'm so important? But because we're a team and I couldn't run any of this stuff without them. But so I have an event this Sunday that is a rally and a vigil in Chicago that I have organized. And I have joked with them, and I keep sending them when I go to the event on how many people say they're coming to my event, how many who are confirmed coming, and then the ones that, click interested. And I just laugh about the number because of their stupid Manitowoc rally. And so I had said to them, yeah, let's compare how they organize a rally and how I organize a rally. So let's see. I haven't been on Facebook all day because I've been doing stuff. Right now, it is 202 people saying they're going and 1.5 thousand people that say interested. And so I had said to the moderators that I'm going to send them pictures and stuff of this, and it's going to be on the news and all this big thing. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll approve this thing, but it's not good. So I've got a call for that tonight at 7:00 because we've had calls every night because this is a rapid response rally that I've only started planning since Sunday. So I've had a week to plan it. So I know I've got tons of emails and such on that I have to deal with. But I've got the call at 5, and then I've got that call, or I've got the live at 5, and then my work call at 7. Or it's not a work call, but all right, let me read your stuff. The first one I can read, because some of them have been booted up, is Desiree saying, you are also going live while people are at work, so probably why not many viewers, LOL. Yeah, well, and the reason I went live is because typically, as soon as we get a filing, I go live to read it, so it's out there, and then people can click on it to read it if they're, or to listen to it if they don't want to read it. Terry says, only 72 on while it's live. How many after it's live? Probably hundreds. Maz says, how come you're on now and not later? Have I missed something? I'm going on live in Gossip now because I had just gotten the filing, and I'll still be live on Stephen Avery Project. Not here in Gossip. I'll be on the public page at 5. This is a closed group. San says, thank you, and you're welcome, and thank you. Tori says, it is crazy how much this family stirs drama and fights. It makes me wonder if they really want Stephen out, considering they didn't have shit to do with Stephen till making a murderer or the few years he was out. Desiree, I think there's so much drama. Like, it's ridiculous what money does to people. I'm glad you're not like that. Thank you. Audrey says, most people are working right now and or asleep overseas. Right. Yeah. I never know for sure when is a good time for me to go live, that since we've got people in all time zones all around the world, and what is the best thing. So that's why sometimes too, I've done an early one and then do a later one. I don't know. Hazel says, Trisha, you're talking to somebody, so I'll skip that one. Thank you, Sherry Lynn, who says she stands with me. The hashtag I stand with Jax. Christy, I have told you to do that so many times. Money, fuck them. Yeah, Christy, the moderators, because we're a team, we're like a little family, and we all work together and do this stuff, but I'm the face, I guess, and so I take the brunt of it. And I know that the moderators get very upset when they see me take a beating online, and I appreciate that. So, they would be out trashing if it wasn't for me trying to keep things more on the down low, especially Christy. Desiree says, I'm poor, I can't pay you. Yeah, I'm not asking anybody to pay me. Hazel says, take and give it personally to Ma. I've done that before, Hazel. I have given Desiree, I've personally given Desiree, Dolores, money. And then Carla lies to people and says, I didn't, that I was lying about it. And I actually have a witness who was there when I gave her stuff. And the moderators know too, because guess what? Some of the money that I gave to Dolores came from a Stephen Avery Project moderator. He PayPal'd it to me, so I pulled it out. And And it was part of the money that I gave to Dolores. So the moderators can tell you of the planning and the money that was brought, but of course nobody will believe them because they're my friends, I guess you would, that they would say. Trisha says, don't know why you don't. People replying to each other. Paul says, as a keyboard warrior, does your husband need a beer? He needs one. He's at work at the print shop. That's where I was actually when this stuff all came in, is I was making stuff for my rally on Sunday. So yeah, I was at the print shop and had to drive home. I drove back from the print shop and had lunch real quick and popped on here. So also while I was there weeding stuff, because I was making a shirt. So Jeff prints out what I want him to print. And, so this thing cuts it, the vinyl, and then it's called weeding it. So I have to pull it apart. So then all that's left on the sticker thing is whatever is going to then go on the shirt. And then he puts it on that, flat heat thing that then sticks that stuff to there. So I would actually have to stop. I was weeding, and then that's when I was getting the email from the clerk on sending me the filing. And so then I have to stop and fill it out, where I have to fill out all this information to get the thing and, my credit card number and all that stuff to pay for it. And then I'm getting the screenshots. Somebody sent me the screenshot of Sandra's post. And so I was like, ugh, and then I did that and then came home. Audrey says, you're above that, Jax. Oh, I can get pretty low. Claire says, don't lower yourself to their low levels, Jax. I 100% am behind you. A lot of people are not just for Stephen's case, but for Melissa and Marnie as well. And Claire, that's an issue I have with Steven Avery Project, is it has so many people, and I would like to use it to bring attention to other cases. And then people get so upset. And Steven doesn't want any mention of any case, including Brendan, ever on there. He demands that you don't talk about anybody else. And it's just like, well, nothing's going on in Steven's case. I mean, I know now the filing just happened yesterday. Hold on, that's my boyfriend now asking if I still have all his button stuff at home. Yes. For making buttons. So he might need something for work. Okay. Where was I? I was distracted. Oh, so why can't we, when we're just waiting and waiting and waiting and there's no news on Stephen's case, no nothing, why can't we be talking about on Steven Avery Project, Adam Brasile took, if that's how you say his name, took an Alford plea and is free. Why can't the Steven Avery Project people read that? And they get so upset if you post something else. So then we have the Making a Murderer or the Steven Avery Project group. So I would like share other stuff in there on occasion, just trying to sneak it in. But it's something that's always upset me, that people get so livid if there's a post made on another case. If you don't want to know about Adam Brasile, and I don't know his case at all, because I'm so involved with the stuff that I'm already doing, I've never looked into his case. But I know there are strong supporters of Steven, like Tanya Henry and Michael Ryan and David K. Sale, who have been there on this Brasile case and advocating and supporting that case. If you don't want to hear about it, you can just skip that post. Why is it a big deal? I don't understand why people get so mad. We should be concerned about everybody who's wrongfully convicted, right? Shouldn't we? That's how I look at it. Kitty, no, there are no release programs, really. I've always thought that there should be something in place to help with jobs, homes, and reintegration into society. Absolutely. I'm disgusted that there's not. Hazel says, help Melissa and Marnie. Amy says, I don't blame you. You help people constantly and get way too much crap for it, mainly from the people that should be backing you. Heidi says, and you should pay off your son's loans. You have been doing this for years with no compensation. You deserve it. Desiree says, I mean, you quit talking to him once before, so it was bound to happen. Yep. Daniele says, so confused. What's going on? Anyone want to brief me? Well, hopefully now my rants, since you typed that you've, you know where we're at now. Heather says, they attack you because you're a threat to them and they hate that you're so right about everything. You're an awesome lady. Well, thank you, Heather. Heidi says, they are pathetic. Hazel says, they really should not be getting on like that, as it's not good for Stephen or Brendan's support. Christy, Christmas is coming. Lots of new PayPals will be popping up. Yep. Sherry, I have not gave Jax one dime for all she does for Stephen, LOL. Snooze says, surely they're committing fraud doing that 1 for them, 3 for me. Oh, I have personally witnessed some of the fraud. So, Heidi, I've donated to Melissa. That's it. Well, thank you so much for, and any little bit you give it to the Kaluzinski GoFundMe, the parents truly use that to be able to go visit their daughter. You know, Paul has so many medical things. He can't work and he's in so much pain. And it's a fight even when he goes out. His poor wife, Cheryl, is always trying to get him to take his cane. And then he'll sometimes take the cane, but then won't use it. And don't tell Cheryl. Cheryl's not on social media, so she won't see this. And so much awful things happen to that family because of Melissa being charged with murdering a child, that, you know, Paul lost his business. All the money they had have gone into, you know, fighting for Melissa. So for them to go twice a month or once a month to go visit Melissa, it's a lot out of, you know, for them with the income they have. So the money that goes into that one, I know, goes into helping them to go visit Melissa, because Paul also really likes to spoil Melissa, where he buys her all this food, all her favorites, and Melissa doesn't even want them all. But a lot of times too, because it takes forever for Melissa when you get there to visit, because Melissa's always, you know, she gets the call, gets told she's got to visit, and then she showers and all this stuff, and takes a while to get to you. So before Melissa even gets her to the table, Paul's got a spread that he's already bought for her out on the table. And it costs a lot. You know, they jack up the prices in those vending machines, and it's money that the Kaluzinski family really doesn't have. So, yeah, so that money, I know, goes to help Melissa. Either it's transportation money or it's the food money while they're visiting. Maz says, I take it you're not talking to Stephen again. According to Sandra, I'm not. Sandra made the announcement saying Stephen said he wanted people to know he's no longer talking to me because, how was it worded? Because it's so funny. I was disrespectful. I am disrespectful because I do not support the money-making schemes. Oh, okay. My boyfriend messaged me about the work. And Jeff, if you're watching this, then I'll tell Annie. Okay. Deanna says, no one has to give the family money or even talk to Stephen to support his innocence. Exactly. Christy. Ooh, Christy saying the F word. She mad. Christy says, I say fuck protecting Stephen, period. He isn't concerned about protecting you or his biggest support page. Hazel says, me too, Jax. I get overzealous and excited and people think I'm a nutcase. I'm just passionate. Hear, hear. Sand said, why would you want to put out something there that would hurt Stephen? I don't want to put out anything that will hurt Stephen. I don't. But it also gets to the point of where Stephen is gonna, if Stephen's part of this, making this post that I'm this or that, well, then maybe I'm gonna return fire. And it is, but you know what people, it's beneath you, blah, blah, blah. It's really not. I'm involved in politics. Politics is a really shady, snaky business. I have chosen not to go that path here so far. And there's nothing that I would tell that would truly hurt Stephen's case. You know, like there's nothing like I have a smoking gun that, oh, Stephen's really guilty, because Stephen is not guilty. Stephen is innocent. But I know stuff. And maybe I'm going to tell. All right, that's a reply. Kitty says, you should, LOL, make them squirm because they are not getting a piece of the pie. Watch their heads pop. Heather says, oh boy, this has me nervous about Stephen now. He knows more than what we think, doesn't he? Not about the crime. You know, so there's, you know, he knows more obviously about what Kathleen has found than we know, but nothing like he really knows so-and-so is the person, nothing like that. Oh, and something I will say too is like when the moderators talk about we should change the name of Steven Avery Project because she just wants to be done with Steven. I know that's something at some point that these people are going to shoot at me saying that I'm not allowed to use Steven's name. It's not true. I can. Legally, I can use Steven Avery Project. So, but they'll do that. It's no different than them starting a page that's called Jax West is a Fraudster. So, but at least Steven Avery Project is all positive about Steven, and the page they started about me, not so much. Trisha Ann, I only got 2 minutes and I have to go back to my kiddo, but you do what you need. Set your son college up and give him a good set in life. What these family members do to you, they're asking for it. Well, thank you, Trisha. Susan says, Jax, I don't know you, but I feel like you are a true advocate for the wrongfully accused. You do what you need to do. Thank you, Susan. Jenny says, thank you for all you do. I stand with you. Thank you, Jenny. Tammy says, let them trash this trash family. Debbie says, I have been outraged with Steven's behavior with you lately. Too bad Marnie Yang couldn't be his teacher. You would think he would try to better his education in the 20 plus years. Shake my head. Tammy says, they treat you terrible and you should not be abused for helping fight for Steven. And let me say this. I got a letter in the mail today from Marnie Yang's dad. I didn't even know he had my address. Marnie Yang's dad. And now here I go tearing up. Isn't it? I tear up about dumb things. It was a very short letter. And it just says that they appreciate, where is it? Let me hold, look at the wall for a second. Okay, it's a very short letter. It just says, Jax, our family is grateful for your efforts on Marnie's behalf. We will try to help defray your visiting expenses as we can. Thank you, the Yang and Marar family. And there was a check for $100 in there. And they don't need to be giving me money. I don't want the family giving me money. Marnie's dad, because, you know, Marnie doesn't have Netflix and able to get a lawyer pro bono. You know, her family, you know, and Marnie's been in prison for 10 years. Her family's been paying all of this. Plus she has 3 kids that were young at the time. They're in their 20s now, you know, but so they've been helping take care of Marnie's kids and everything. And that was just unbelievably sweet. And so, yeah, so he sent me a check for $100, and I will just be using that on my next visit with Marnie. You know, and Marnie does every time I visit her, and she'll be like, would it be okay if I got this? And it's like, absolutely, you know, food wise, you can order whatever you want. You know, so, and Melissa does the same thing. Melissa will do, is it okay if I also got such and such? And, you know, so, and I'm happy to do it. And I've told you guys before in lives where Marnie dreams of a Klondike bar. She's told me sometimes on visits with her dad, she's had 3 on the visit of the Klondike bar. That's, you know, so she gets so excited and her face lights up as she eats the Klondike bar, you know, something so simple, but makes such a big deal to her, you know. And so Marnie gets the same things, same exact things every visit. Just this last one, though, she asked for a burger too, which never happens. So that was very sweet of Marnie's dad, you know, because who am I? You know, it's not my family member that's in there. You know, the horrors that the families go through. And he thought to take time out to write this to me and send this to me. You know, so you see the way that all the other families that I deal with for the cases I advocate for, Kent Pellegrini, Melissa Kaluzinski, and Marnie Yang, those families all treat me like family. And look at the way Stephen and Brendan's families treat me. All for trying to just support them. Where am I? Amy, you should write a book. Tell all secrets about the family. People say they would buy the book. Christy says, you better bitch about that blank page. They wouldn't give you a page for free, just saying. She's referring to, if you weren't here at the beginning, when I read the filing, there's a blank page in the middle of it, and I have to pay per page. Even though, you know, they're not printing it. I understand that those costs are, if you're going in and getting a physical hard copy of something, you're paying to print per page on there. But you're just emailing me something, but I still have to pay per page, and they charged me for a blank page. Tricia says, I'm sure Carla blocking me. Oh, Tricia says she's all over Facebook to delete this group and unfollow you. F you, Carla. Oh, they do that all the time where they contact, you know, so they go through our member list and then we'll contact you sneak like and tell you to leave the group. Because again, it's all about numbers for them. And I know I was pointing out our 202,000 people, but it's just to show you that it is the biggest group. Stephen Avery Project is bigger than all of their groups combined. All of them. All the Stephen Avery groups combined. Yet that's the one they constantly want to take down. Debbie says, he sounds pretty selfish. Hazel says, God bless your boyfriend for his patience. Tammy says, this family needs to be exposed for the money grabbers that they are. This would shut this down once and for all. People are replying to each other. Tammy says, change the name of the page to Stephen Avery and Others Project. Jeff joined. Jeff, I have, so if you heard me, I got your thing on Annie's thing. When I'm done doing this live, I'll get into that stuff and I'll tell Annie that that stuff is done. Heidi says, Paul Kaluzinski requested her as a friend. I was so excited. Just be prepared. Paul's post, he doesn't quite, and Paul, if you're listening to this, if you watch this at any point, you know it's true. He doesn't have quite a grasp on how Facebook works. So he'll like post a post and then he'll like his own post, or he'll then share his own post. And so just, Audrey says, other posts get the page too cluttered. Any post that comes on makes you think something is new in the one case you are following. I prefer different pages so all information on one case is in one location. That is a good point, Audrey. Amy says, let's be honest, if Netflix would follow you around and include clips from these chats, that would be the best Making a Murderer 3 ever. Michelle says, Jax, can you give an example of one of the things you haven't said yet? I can give an easy one. That and I'm going to get ripped for this one. I'm not going to get in detail. But Stephen really isn't a nice guy. He's innocent. But he's not a nice guy. He is taking advantage as well. And he is doing a lot of things to stir up this drama. And he has said things about people that I haven't put out there. He's told me things about family and things that are going on with the salvage yard. But yeah, I think what I'm going to end up doing is I'm not going to give out that information for free. I'm going to cash in. Heather says, dang it, joining late, so I'll have to watch from beginning to understand to the context of this live session. Hazel says, you could call it the Avery Project as everyone would know who it was anyhow. Well, and something I'll say about the Stephen Avery Project, I've always hated the name of it, but I didn't start it. You know, Curtis started it. So I hate that the initials spell SAP. I'm just like, oh my God, that's such a bad look. When, you know, you have people already talking about Stephen's not all that bright, and now it's SAP, you know. So I've never liked it, but I've kept it what it was and what it was intended to be. Heidi says, it's okay to get emotional regarding things near and dear to your heart. Debbie says, that is why I support Marnie 100%. Thank you, Debbie. Julie said, I would so burn that no trespassing sign. For those that don't know what that sign is, that is from the salvage yard. That is actual sign from there. Debbie says, we don't have Vintage Jesus anymore. Now we have a pink cat. Oh, this is a special pink cat. You see how cute he is? Let me, oh, the sun's on him too bad, so you can't see his face really. Where can I get it so you can see his face? No, his face goes, rawr. Rawr. Sweet kitty. Rawr, kitty. My kitty cat. But I keep saying I should pull, because Window Jesus is right here. I should pull Window Jesus out and put him over here for you guys. Heather says, any advice to what to say to the ones that are sticking up for Sandy and Carla? I appreciate people if they want to defend me, but you're better off not even bothering. They just want attention. So don't give it to them. Just ignore them. Have a laugh. So I'm, you know, and I get it about wanting to fight. I mean, because that's basically what I'm doing here, because they're going to watch this because they've got spies in here. And so they're going to watch this, and then they're going to, you know, report on it and say stuff and blah, 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 blah. It's really not worth your energy. I would rather the time it would take you to, you know, try and argue with them, write a letter to Marnie or Melissa or Kent, or, you know, go do something positive. Take their negative bullshit and make a positive out of it, you know? Send a welcome home card to Adam Brazil. I'm sure you can find the information somewhere on that, and how you could, welcome him home. Something, do something positive, and don't bother, because there's nothing you can say to them that's going to change anything. That's something I've also learned in my time in politics and activism, that it's pointless to try to convince the opposition of your stance, because just like you're not going to change my view, doesn't matter what somebody says to me. Well, no, that's not true. Because if you come to me with a fact on something that I think, and you're going to show me actual evidence, I'll flip, because facts are facts. So, but there's nothing that they can say that's going to switch my thinking that them making money for themselves is a good thing to be doing, is the right thing to be doing. No, you shouldn't be making money for yourselves. And Stephen told me he didn't like it either. Christy says, someone needs to fill Marnie's family in. That isn't the way this works. You're supposed to benefit off your loved one's tragedy, and you're supposed to collect money from the supporters, not give money to the supporters. They have it also wrong, LOL. People replying to each other. Debbie, don't bother contacting me to leave. Hashtag deaf ears. Sherry says, I wish they would contact me. My country foul mouth would sure come out. Hazel says, very good point, Audrey. Sherry says, you go, girl. You deserve the money. Thank you. Hazel says, well, we all know that, Jax. You only have to listen to some of the calls. But as you say, he is innocent. Yep, he's innocent. I will not switch from that. Stephen is innocent. He can call me every name in the book. He's innocent. Heather says, is Stephen smarter than we think he is? No, he's not smarter than you think he is. But he does say things on occasion that is really funny and really maybe not a smart thing. But I was like, dang, I wasn't expecting him to think of something like that. So, and he can be very funny. He's not all bad, but he's drama. Amy said, I would cash in, and anything you get, help deserving people with their appeals. Kitty says, that doesn't surprise me. If the rest of the family is this messed up, he would be too. Not to mention what years behind bars with criminals do to a person. Tori says, make a podcast, Jax. Your public speaking is on point. Well, thank you, Tori. And I don't know if Tammy is still on here, but Tammy is the one that, Tammy is somebody that I really look up to. She started a publishing house, and she was trying to give a place for people to tell their stories on injustice, and then from there, it snowballed into her making WMP Justice Review, which WMP stands for Words Matter Publishing, what her publishing house is. And so Justice Review is to look at these cases of injustice and to try and help people. And now from that, she started the Citizen Investigators from there, which you have to pay $10 on the Marnie Yang website first before she'll approve you into the Facebook group, where then that money is going to go towards helping pay for these experts on cases. And so she's putting things in that group. Right now, we're focusing on the Marnie Yang case. But so she's putting things in there that you won't see anywhere else. Evidence that we want the fresh eyes to look at, like what Carol Ann Fitzgerald did for these quarry bones, and to get other people's thoughts. So Tammy's been working on this case for over 3 years. She knows it backwards and forwards. Marnie even jokes that Tammy knows the case more than she does. But even Tammy could miss something. So Tammy has now acquired a Roku network. That's WMP Justice TV. That's going to be launching soon. And she has asked me to do a show. And she gave me the homework assignment for last weekend that I am to come up with the name for my show, write a, blurb on what the show's going to be about, and then what would my first episode be. So I haven't come up with a name for it because the show I would be covering wrongful convictions, and then also my activism stuff, which might get me in some hot water because politics is a tough thing. So not everybody's going to agree with my stances on the top issues. But I do a lot of stuff in advocating world, not just for wrongfully accused. So the show would be, so like Tammy's told me she wants me to start filming myself when I do things. That could be spliced into a show. And that's so weird to me because yes, I know this is filming me, but I'm talking to you guys and you'll ask questions and I'm answering you. But for something to just be filming me and I'm talking and there's, because again, it's like we're a team here. This isn't like a podcast that I've put together. You guys are contributing to it. It wouldn't be anything if you weren't there also talking. And so like I was at a political event on Sunday and she wanted me to like film myself there and then I forgot and didn't do it. It's weird. And then I've got this huge event, like I said, on Sunday, and I'm sure that's something that should be filmed and I don't know. But so something will happen. I go to Tammy for advice and help and, so Tammy's one of the people I immediately sent the Sandra screenshot to so she could see what's happening again. Mark says, I'd be pretty hateful too if I sat in jail most of my life. Yes. Well, he's not hateful like that because he's always, in a good mood and laughing and smiling and stuff when I talk to him. But he says some things that's all I'm going to say about that right now. Trisha says, Jax, what do you think about these photos Steve requested, KZ requested, and the post about Dolores golf cart at the quarry? I haven't read it, Trisha, honestly. I have been all in mode preparing for this rally I'm doing on Sunday this week. And then on Wednesday, I've had a documentary crew that's been following me around the last 2 years. And on another thing that I advocate for. So they were at my house filming me from 8:30 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. So I wasn't online. And so I can't speak to that because I don't know what that is. Replies to people. Heidi says, my dad says he believes that there is a bunch of shit the county did wrong, but he has met Stephen through business and he says that Stephen is and I quote, a fucking bad person. Doesn't mean he did it, but I can't stand the man, end quote. I get that. Michelle says, thank you for sharing, Jack. Steve is probably not a nice guy. People who are supporting him because they think he's nice are misguided. It's about the injustice of his trial. The rest is noise. Beautifully put, Michelle. Hazel says, I'm trying to reply to Terry, but I'm giving up. Hazel says, where's Carol Ann? I haven't seen her and I really liked her posts. Well, I think she gets really busy at times doing other stuff. And then I think there's times she's not really on Facebook much and that is mostly on Twitter. I'll read that in a second because I think I'm down at the bottom. One of the moderators just sent me something. So, okay, I'm down at the bottom. I've been on here almost 2 hours. So I need to go so I can do other stuff before live at 5. So I'll be live on Stephen Avery Project in about 2 hours. So, but that is not going to be about the drama, hopefully. I'm sure there'll be people who will try to bring it in. So we'll be going over, I'll be reading again the filing over there. So, and as always, if you have a question, because I'm sure Carla and Sandra and Tracy and all them are going to put a bunch of stuff out there. If they say something and you have a question, ask me. You can post it in MAM Gossip. So it's public for people in our group to see. I have nothing to hide. I will answer anything. Yes, Christy says, yes, I need to feed people before next live. Yes. So, all right, I'm out for now. Thank you so much to those that support me. And like was said, don't feed the trolls. You don't need to go and defend me over there and try and fight with them. It'll get nowhere, but I appreciate the thought. So, all right, see you at 5 on Stephen Avery Project.